The hum of the plane was steady, almost hypnotic, but my heart refused to match its calm rhythm. I sat by the window, watching clouds drift below like soft, indifferent ghosts. 6 years. That's how long it had been since I'd last seen my family. 6 years since that Thanksgiving night when I swore I'd never look back. Now here I was, 32 years old, flying home for the first time. My reflection in the window looked composed, sleek black blazer, silk blouse, lipstick that hadn't faded even after a 10-hour flight. On the surface, I was everything I once dreamed of becoming. Successful, independent, untouchable. But my phone buzzed again, flashing the message that started it all. Come home for Thanksgiving, Emily. It's time. Time for what, exactly? Forgiveness? Pretending the past never happened? I slipped my phone into my bag, taking a slow breath. The cabin smelled faintly of coffee and recycled air, the kind of scent that clings to your clothes and memories. I scrolled through old photos, Mom's laugh, my dad carving the turkey, my little brother grinning with mashed potatoes on his face. That version of us felt like a movie I once loved but could never finish. As the captain announced our descent into Boston, my pulse quickened. 6 years away. And now I was going home to a table where my seat, my place, might no longer exist. 6 years ago, the house smelled like cinnamon, roasted turkey, and tension. Thanksgiving used to be my favorite holiday until that night. I was 26, standing in the kitchen, sleeves rolled up, helping Mom with the pies while Dad uncorked wine in the dining room. My younger brother, Ryan, was bragging about his new promotion, and every so often, Mom would glance at me, waiting for me to say something equally impressive. But I had just quit my job at a marketing firm to start over, to move abroad and build something of my own. When I finally told them, the silence hit harder than any argument could. Dad was the first to break it. You're what? Moving to London? For a blog. His voice cracked with disbelief, the kind that twists into ridicule. It's not just a blog, I said quietly. It's my writing, my work. I have savings. He cut me off. You're throwing your degree, your career, and your life away for some fantasy. Do you even think before you do these things? Mom tried to mediate, but the damage was done. Ryan muttered something about another one of Emily's dramatic phases. I remember gripping the edge of the counter, so hard my fingers ached. The pie crust tore beneath my hand. I wanted to shout, to explain that I wasn't running, I was reaching. But all that came out was a trembling whisper. I can't keep living a life that doesn't feel like mine. Dad looked at me then, eyes cold. If you walk out that door tonight, Emily, don't expect a seat waiting when you come back. The room blurred. My throat burned. And then, from behind me, Grandma Rose's soft hand touched my shoulder. She slipped her silver bracelet into my palm, delicate, engraved with a single word, courage. Sometimes, she murmured, leaving is how you learn who you are. That night, I packed my suitcase. My hands shook as I zipped it shut. No dramatic goodbye, no tears from anyone but me. I walked out into the cold November air, the bracelet tight around my wrist, promising myself I'd never return until I had something worth showing. London didn't welcome me with open arms. It tested me. The city was gray, unrelenting, and brutally honest. I arrived with 2 suitcases, a dream, and just enough savings to cover 2 months of rent in a shared flat above a bakery that smelled like warm sugar and exhaustion. At first, I freelanced, odd marketing gigs, ghostwriting travel blogs, editing startup websites for pennies. I worked from cramped coffee shops, my laptop balanced between cold cups and crumbs. There were nights I'd stare at the screen until dawn, trying to convince myself that leaving home hadn't been a colossal mistake. But little by little, things began to shift. A woman named Clara, a retired editor I met at a networking event, saw something in me I couldn't yet see in myself. Your words have weight, she said one afternoon, sliding a manuscript back across the cafe table. You don't just write. You translate emotion. She became my mentor, teaching me how to pitch clients, negotiate contracts, and, most importantly, believe that I was worth what I asked for. Under her guidance, my freelance projects turned into steady contracts, then full campaigns. Soon, I wasn't just writing copy. I was helping companies find their voice. I founded my own boutique agency, Northlight Creative, from a small rented office with peeling paint and one flickering desk lamp. The day I signed my first big client, a sustainable fashion brand, I sat on the floor, eating takeaway curry, crying tears of relief and disbelief. By the third year, I had a team. By the fourth, we'd gone international. My work started appearing in magazines and my clients doubled. But still, I never told my family. When Mom called on my birthday once, I told her I was doing fine. I didn't mention the new apartment overlooking the Thames, the investors interested in buying into my firm, or the award I'd won for creative leadership. I posted modest pictures online, sunsets, books, coffee cups, just enough to say I'm alive, but never enough to show I made it. Sometimes, I'd glance at Grandma's bracelet shining against my wrist as I signed contracts or boarded flights. It reminded me of that night, the fire, the heartbreak, and the courage that carried me through. Still, no matter how high I climbed, every Thanksgiving felt like an ache I couldn't name. I imagined them laughing, passing the cranberry sauce, the empty chair where I used to sit fading from memory. Then one cold morning in November, my phone buzzed with a message from Mom. Just 7 words. Come home for Thanksgiving, Emily. It's time.
I stared at it for a long time.
6 years of silence, and suddenly, it's time. I didn't know if it meant forgiveness, or curiosity, or guilt. But deep down, I knew I was finally ready to face the table where I no longer had a seat. The moment I stepped through the front door, the smell hit me. Roasted turkey, sage, and nostalgia. Everything looked almost the same. The same beige curtains, the same faint creak in the floor near the hallway, even the same family photo on the wall, except now there were newer faces added, ones I didn't recognize. Mom was the first to spot me. Emily, she said, her voice catching somewhere between shock and joy. She wrapped her arms around me, and for a second, I let myself melt into her warmth. But the years between us were loud, unspoken, thick, undeniable. Dad stood by the dining table, older but still proud, his jaw tightening as our eyes met. You came, he said simply, no smile, no hostility, just surprise. I did, I replied, setting my coat down. Ryan appeared from the kitchen, his arm around a woman with soft curls and nervous eyes. This is Sophie, he said. My fiancée. She smiled shyly. It's so nice to finally meet you. I've heard so much. I smiled back, trying to stay steady. But then I saw it, my chair. The one I'd sat in every Thanksgiving since I was old enough to hold a fork. Sophie's coat hung over its back. Her wineglass already filled. The smallest, sharpest part of me wanted to laugh. My seat at the table, gone, just as Dad had promised. Dinner started awkwardly. Everyone tried too hard. Mom kept fussing over the gravy. Ryan told long stories about work that didn't need telling. Sophie kept reaching for my hand, sweet and oblivious. Finally, halfway through the meal, Dad cleared his throat. So he began, how's London? You're still writing, right? His tone was polite, distant, as if we were strangers at a networking event. I set down my fork.
Yes.
I'm still writing. I let the silence linger before adding. Actually, I run a creative agency now. We work with international brands, some based here, actually. Ryan laughed lightly. Oh, that's cool. You mean like freelancing still, or? I smiled, tilting my head.
No.
I own the agency. Northlight Creative. The room went still. Dad's knife paused mid-slice. Mom blinked. Ryan's hand froze around his glass. You own it, he asked slowly.
Yes.
And funny enough, I added, my gaze steady on Dad, one of our newest clients is Dalton and Pierce, the firm your company partners with. He looked at me, confusion mixing with realization. That's your agency? I nodded. We just signed a 3-year contract last month. No one spoke. The hum of the fridge filled the silence like background music for irony. Mom's eyes began to glisten. Emily, why didn't you tell us? I shrugged lightly, though my chest was tight. You never asked. Ryan exhaled, half a laugh, half disbelief.
Wow.
I thought you were still trying to figure things out. I said softly. And I did. For the first time that evening, Dad's expression cracked. He looked not angry but unsure, the kind of loss that comes when your assumptions collapse. Well, he finally said, clearing his throat. I guess I misjudged you. I met his eyes, calm, steady.
No, Dad.
You just saw who I was before I did. And then, almost instinctively, I reached for my grandmother's bracelet, still on my wrist after all these years, and smiled faintly. For the rest of the evening, conversation flowed easier. Laughter returned, tentative but real. Yet, as I glanced at Sophie sitting in my old seat, I didn't feel replaced. I felt free, because I hadn't come back for a chair. I'd come back to reclaim my voice. After dinner, the air softened. The tension that had hovered all evening began to melt, replaced by curiosity and something else. Respect. Dad lingered by the fireplace, while Mom poured coffee. Ryan and Sophie chatted quietly, their laughter distant but warm. I stood by the window, looking out at the dark yard, the trees stripped bare by November's chill. It was strange, being back here. The same place that once made me feel small now felt different.
Smaller than me.
Dad approached, hands in his pockets. You've done well, he said, his tone measured, like he wasn't sure how to say the words. I have, I replied. It wasn't easy. He nodded. I can imagine. A pause. Emily, I know I said things that night. Things I shouldn't have. I turned to face him, the bracelet on my wrist glinting in the firelight. You told me not to expect a seat when I came back. His shoulders fell slightly. I did. I let the silence hang before speaking again. The thing is, Dad, I'm not here to take my seat back. I've built my own table now. But I glanced toward Mom and Ryan. I am willing to help if we're all ready to do things differently. Mom joined us then, her eyes red from quiet tears. Help? With what? I smiled gently. Ryan mentioned earlier he's struggling to expand his startup. I could connect him with investors I know. And I heard the house mortgage has been heavy lately. I can take care of that. Ryan's head snapped toward me. You'd really do that? Yes, I said, then added carefully. But there's one condition for each of you. I turned to Dad first. For you, no more judging worth by titles or paychecks. I need you to see effort, not just outcomes. His gaze softened, and for once, he didn't argue. Then to Ryan. You need to stop chasing success for approval. Build something because you love it, not because you want Dad's praise. Ryan looked stunned but nodded slowly. You're right. I needed to hear that. Finally, I faced Mom. And you, stop trying to keep the peace by shrinking yourself. Speak up when something's wrong. You taught me kindness, but it's okay to expect it back. Mom covered her mouth, tears welling again. I will, sweetheart. I promise. The room fell quiet, heavy but healing. I reached into my bag and pulled out an envelope. This, I said, handing it to Ryan, is a start for your next project. Consider it a gift, not a bailout. He took it, speechless. Then I unclasped Grandma Rose's bracelet, placing it gently on the mantel. I think she'd want us to start fresh, I whispered. For the first time in years, Dad smiled. Not the proud, guarded one I remembered, but something real. She'd be proud of you, Em. We all are. And for once, I believed him. The next morning, the house felt lighter. Sunlight streamed through the kitchen window, catching the steam rising from Mom's coffee mug. The air smelled of leftover pie and new beginnings. I sat at the table, not my old seat, not anyone's in particular, just a chair, simple and unclaimed. Ryan and Sophie were in the living room, laughing softly as they flipped through old photo albums. Dad was outside, fixing the loose porch rail he'd ignored for years. Even that small act felt like an apology he didn't know how to put into words. Mom placed a plate of pancakes in front of me and smiled. It feels like you never left, she said quietly. I met her eyes. It feels like I finally came home. For a while, we just sat in that easy silence, the kind that doesn't demand, doesn't wound. I glanced toward the mantel, where Grandma's bracelet rested. The silver caught the light, the engraved word courage glinting like a quiet blessing. I remembered her voice that night years ago. Sometimes, leaving is how you learn who you are. And now, sitting there surrounded by people who had once made me feel unseen, I understood the second half of her wisdom. Sometimes, returning is how you show who you've become. After breakfast, I slipped on my coat. I had a flight back to London that evening, and for the first time, leaving didn't feel like running away. It felt like balance. At the door, Dad hugged me, solid and sincere. "Don't wait another 6 years next time," he said. I smiled. "That depends on who's sitting in my seat." He chuckled, the sound warm, almost proud. As I stepped into the crisp November air, the wind carried the scent of home, wood smoke, apple, forgiveness. My phone buzzed with new messages from clients, a reminder of the world I'd built on my own. But for once, I didn't rush to answer. I looked back through the window one last time. My family gathered, the table full, the light soft around them, and I realized the truth. I never lost my seat. I just had to build one big enough for who I am now. And that Thanksgiving, I finally took it. Bottom of form.